Okay, there we go. So Robin, so good to gather together in sacred space and share some storytelling. I'm going to begin with a blessing for us to come into this space together, and then I'll invite you to introduce yourself a little bit too. I was eating pancakes this morning, and I decided that writing blessings goes along really well with eating pancakes. So
Perfect.
This is what poured out of my heart this morning. May the stirrings of our hearts call us into sacred stories, rousing spirit, beckoning inward. May spring's sweet breath shape a circle between us, hallowed whispers of kindred touch, stretching among fellow travelers, holding each soul in gentle silence, compassionate witness, filling redolent wisdom and tender wounds. May I gracefully receive companions cradling my heart in sanctuary. May my tread upon soft earth be nimble when yours is heavy. May your radiance, a soft lantern, cast a devoted glow when I dim. My luminous neighbor across this hallowed field. May horizons ever summon us, sacred conversations, captivating promise, elevating delight, hearkening divine invitation. So may it be. So may it be.
Amen.
Amen.
Absolutely
Amen.
beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So the reason that I created this container for sacred stories is really the sense that in listening to others' stories, we hear our own. And I love the idea of being able to provide nourishment for our communities through storytelling. And I came across this Parker Palmer quote 2 days ago on another bike ride. And I'll just share it kind of as we set a container for this space. We have to create a different atmosphere for the soul to find its voice. Quiet, inviting, and trustworthy spaces. It's Parker Palmer. And so I'm really honored that you stepped into this trustworthy space with me. And
Thanks for creating this
vision
and gift.
This is the first time we're meeting, so it's really sweet to be able to do it virtually and so open-heartedly. And I'd love for you, Robin, to share a little bit about yourself, whatever you feel aligned for you to share.
Okay. So I live in New York, born and bred. Mm-hmm. I've had many different, periods of my life where I've been different parts of me have expressed themselves, and where I find myself now is with 3 adult children and divorced and selling a home that I've lived in for 26 years and birthed all my children in, literally gave birth to my children in this home and raised them here. And I'm in this process of revisioning, reinventing, and what's next. And I've been in that process for the last few years. It's been a transitional period. So, and so much has blossomed out of that, including a real deepening of my own connection to the divine, my connection to faith, to really regular spiritual practice that just now informs everything and every day of how I live. But I professionally, besides being a mom for a really long time and being a business partner to my husband in his multiple businesses, I've been a Jewish educator and a yoga teacher for over 16 years now. And I was also always an avid student of mysticism and astrology and comparative religion and tarot, but that was more personal and something I did for friends. More like, oh, I can read your astrology because I was fascinated. And in the last 2 years, I really fully owned that and said, well, you know what? This is powerful work. It's really meaningful work. People want this. And it's not just a side thing. It's actually really who I am. It's an expression of who I am. It's what I have to offer as part of the service that I'm meant to, be in this world. So I stopped being sort of hidden about the astrology, or stopped being concerned about who's going to think what, and they're going to think I'm weird. And if people know I'm a mystic and an astrologer, will that somehow delegitimize me as a yoga teacher, as a Jewish educator for people's children? And I stopped caring and worrying about that. And I just said, this is authentically who I am. I love this work. I believe in this work. And the people who need to find me to get that kind of guidance, that's who I'm here to serve. And that's what matters. So I became a professional astrologer. And most recently, this last year, I became a professional life coach, because what I saw through the astrology work is that it really helps people come to a deeper sense of self-awareness, a deeper sense of, this is my story and my narrative, and there are parts of that narrative that need healing or need to evolve, or that I want to step past, and how do I move into the purpose that I see myself being? How do I really actualize myself? And astrology has a lot to say about that. Like, what is your divine gift and purpose and pathway in this life? So I became a life coach so that I can actually do that follow-up work with people, to be a supportive presence, and to ask the right questions, and to really, kind of cheerlead and advocate for people's resourcefulness to find their own answers and their own inner wisdom, and have accountability and feel empowered to take next steps to make the changes they want to make in their life. So that's super exciting. And that's where I'm at now. And
there's so much beautiful overlap between some of our paths and stories. I'm going to save my question about the juxtaposition between Judaism and astrology, tarot, mysticism, for like a little bit later in our conversation. And I just have to ask you, what sign are you? I mean, I feel like this is really important information before we dive in.
Very important for your listeners.
It is.
Inquiring minds need to know. I am Sun Moon conjunct in Aquarius. I was born on the new moon in Aquarius, which is also the Chinese New Year, by the way, the Lunar New Year, and in the 12th house, which is a very spiritual Neptunian Piscean, and I have Pisces on my ascendant, Pisces rising. Yeah, and Sagittarius at the midheaven. Okay. So teaching is definitely my path, my purpose around spirituality. I mean, that's really,
I love it. Fascinating. Okay, good.
Oh, can I ask you yours?
For sure. Yes, Libra, Sun and Moon, and Virgo rising, and really identify with all of them. I'm such a Libra. But also, I think my love of a good spreadsheet is like my Virgo side. You could probably tell me way more than I'm telling you, but that's
absolutely. We'll do that one day.
Who I am. So there's, goodness, our life. Well, I was thinking as you kind of started to share your story and the different chapters and sides that we each hold, like we contain multitudes, and in thinking about a story to share, I'm sure there were a bazillion you could choose from, but I'd love to invite you to share a sacred story from your life that feels especially potent right now. And we'll kind of explore it together a little bit.
Yeah. So there are so many, when you view the world and you view your own life experience as a sacred journey, then every story is sacred, right? So it's very hard to choose a sacred story because it's, but I think the one I'm most immersed in right now is really about this learning how to let go of attachments. Learning to
whatever could you be talking about, Robin? I have no experience with that ever.
So the most immediate way that that shows up in my life most recently is that, so I was divorced. I was married for 24 years. My high school sweetheart, even younger than that, met him when I was 12, fell in
Oh
love,
my goodness.
dated through
Yeah.
high school, college, very young,
Yeah.
raised this amazing, beautiful family together, had a lot of happy years, a lot of success together. And then like some relationships, you know, which evolve in different directions, you know, it made the most sense for us to separate. And from that moment 5 years ago, as part of that separation, I knew I was going to have to sell my house when my youngest son graduated high school. So really this sacred story begins 5 years ago with this knowing that my life is not continuing on a path that I thought it was continuing on. You know, lots of us, we just assume today and tomorrow and the next day are a continuation of where we've been. And then something happens that cleaves that, and there's an ending point. And those big transition points have so much to teach us, right? So the divorce itself was a huge transition point, but the knowing that from that moment, this house was on a limited time, like it was not going to be mine anymore. And this preparation for letting go, which has really been a very interesting journey. And I've gone through multiple passes of what can I let go of? What don't I need? And you go through memories and you go through, you know, material things, objects, like they hold a certain charge, a certain energy, they trigger a certain memory. And you're like, well, could I live without, if I let go of this object, will I still have the memory? What would trigger that memory? Was that memory sweet? Was that memory sad? Do I want to hold on to that in some way? So it's been a real journey of like letting go. And the other thing I've learned in that, I'll just say one other thing. It's also been a real journey of trusting the universe. And this is where in the last 5 years, I mean, I've been practicing yoga my whole life since I'm 18. I taught myself to meditate starting when I was 16. And I, you know, studied all kinds of religion. I love religious philosophy. I just love it. A lot of spiritual practice. But something about being in this transitional state and not knowing what the future looks like anymore. That was the key to me. The letting go of thinking, I know what it's going to look like in my life in 6 months from now, or in a year from now, or in 3 years from now. I had no idea. And even into the last, literally, I just signed a contract for a new place that I'm moving into.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you.
Really big. Really
until a week ago, I didn't even know where I was going to land.
Yeah.
Do I want to be in California? Do I want to be in Oregon? Do I want to be in Florida? Do I want to stay in New York? Does it look like an apartment or a co-op or a condo or a house? Like it was so many like wide open possibility and no certainty.
Yeah.
And what that left me with, and it's been 5 years of that, like knowing that I'm giving up this whole life's like this place, you know, and a place is important. You know, one name for God is Hamakom.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like God is the place, and the feminine name for God or presence is Shechina. And this
Which
divine
means indwelling. Yeah.
the Shechina is like the presence of divinity here and now in my body, in my awareness, in my physical place. And so this feeling of not knowing where that place would be was really an act of surrender and trust that, so one of my, this is part of my sacred story, is that part of my daily practice that I took on in this transition was really to offer back, like to offer, you know, with open hands, literally like biyadoaf kidruchi, which means into your hands, I trust my spirit, right? And just this offering every day, saying, you know, let it be God's will to direct me in the right time to the right place. So I also, one thing I learned besides faith and trust and non-attachment is also patience. This, and the tarot card that would come up for me over and over and over and over again was the Wheel of Fortune, which is very much this, like, you're not in control of the timing of where the wheel lands and when it lands. And you need to let go and just have faith and trust that fate, you know, will guide you to the right place.
Do
So
you?
that's really, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Oh, and so many thoughts. One is just this idea of homecoming, right? And that we have physical homes, but it feels to me like spirit is beckoning you almost into a deeper homecoming into yourself, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing. So I let's see, where do I want to start? Um, I have two questions for you. I'm going to start like this. So, this deep trust, this deep surrender, um, choosing the open palms approach to how we dance with the universe. Do you find it easier to do when things are really wonderful or when you're getting knocked on your tush? I was thinking about that today.
Yeah. I actually think it's when you're getting knocked down that you realize there's an overlay of suffering that we often put to our situation, right? The situations that arise in our life, sometimes, usually, they're very much out of our control. We're not in control of the pandemic and the quarantine. We're not in control of how other people say things, do things. You know, we think we have control over a lot more than we really do. And I think that what happens is when things are going great, we sort of think we're responsible for bringing that into our lives. And I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes it's easier. I think sometimes in those situations, like gratitude is a huge practice, obviously. Whenever anything good shows up, I mean, that's another kind of divine presence and practice of like thanking God, thanking the universe for giving me all of this goodness. So for sure, being present to that in the good things. But I think something happens when when things are hard and when you're, in astrological terms, actually, and in like archetypal psychology terms, this is very much the Pluto. Pluto
Yeah,
is Hades, the god of the underworld, and
yeah,
it's this through loss, through grief, through trauma, through crisis, through power and control issues, and these deeply intense experiences that affect us on a psychological level, right? Something about that takes us to a place where we have to find surrender more with the outer circumstance. And then what is left when we recognize I can't control all of the outer pieces and the moving parts, but what can I control is how do I choose to transform from this experience? What do I choose to learn? How is
mm,
this going to fuel my growth? How is this going to fuel my faith, my divine connection, my love? How does this make me more open-hearted instead of closed? Right? So
yeah.
those are the choices in those moments that I think surrender is key, you know?
I also find I find for myself, that at first when we realize that things are not going the way we expected or wanted, we can rub up against a little bit of wanting to grasp more tightly or figure things out or something like that. But I find for myself, once I kind of get over that hump, there's a tremendous freedom in letting go. I mean, it's almost more freedom than when things are going really well and you're in a place of surrender, because when you realize that you can just um, trust in the mystery,
Yeah.
um, I feel like that's like a heart-soaringly beautiful freedom. Yeah,
Yeah. So I have my youngest child is turning 20 actually this week.
yeah. Oh,
And he's
congratulations.
very, very spiritual, very much into meditation. He's studying a lot of yoga and Buddhism, and his mantra is let go.
Yeah,
That's his mantra.
yeah.
And I've taken that mantra on in my own practice very much, because it does come back to that. It does come back to that. There's a peacefulness when you remember that part. When you are trying to analyze and predict, and it's great to plan. It's great to know what your vision is for yourself. It's great to have actions and be real about that and have, like, and but there's also this piece of recognizing that at the end of it, you also have to just surrender your efforts. Like, do the effort and surrender the
Yeah,
result. And
yeah,
that's
it's
actually a
always
very,
both,
yeah.
right? It's
Yeah,
always
that's a
both.
yogic
Yeah.
teaching. I love that sutra. It's one of my favorite yoga sutras of Patanjali. It's Abhyasa Vairagya. So it's this idea that of effort and surrender, and this saying that you offer the fruit of your labor to the feet of the Lord,
Mm,
you know,
mm,
and so
mhm.
you give your best effort with what you can, with what's in your control, but then
Yeah,
you surrender it and you allow the divine to respond and to, you know, guide you. And it is
yeah.
much about allowing yourself to be in that flow.
Spirit also really loves to dance in the unknown, in the liminal space. You know, I feel like um, it's sometimes when we're brought to our knees a little bit that we're even more receptive to dialogue with the sacred. Yeah. So I was thinking about this idea of kind of spiritual listening. You mentioned a few moments ago, like deepening your own practice of listening to messages that you're getting or your own inner voice. And I'd love to hear more about what are your favorite ways to listen?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. That's such a great question. Um, so, hmm. So I think it's very much first about being mindful. And being mindful is really, Thich Nhat Hanh says, being mindful is always being mindful of something.
Mm.
Like your mind is always attentive to something, but it's either we're not aware what it, you know, like we're not always choosing that. It's always doing its
Right.
own thing.
Right.
So mindfulness is really that act of like choosing what you are bringing your attention to in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So to listen mindfully is really about bringing your attention to whatever you're focused on listening. So it's interesting on a purely physical embodied level. One of my favorite meditation practices to become very present and very still and very calm is to just listen to all the ambient sound around me,
Yeah.
whatever I hear, whether it's motors of cars passing by or an airplane overhead or the humming of the refrigerator or more beautiful sounds like the birds chirping outside my window. Something about listening very, very deeply without any judgment, without
Mm-hmm.
pushing away, or this one's nice and this one's not nice. Just allowing yourself to be present with what you hear is very, very grounding, brings you into the present moment. But on a spiritual level of listening, I pay attention to dreams.
Yeah.
No, I really do pay attention to dream images, especially. I think there's something really important there that our subconscious mind is trying to understand, process, show us, you know? So I pay attention to that. I
Yeah.
pay attention to signs and synchronicities along the
Mm-hmm.
road. So a funny story that just
Yeah.
happened the other day. I saw this co-op and I was really excited about it. I was like, I think I could really be happy here.
Mm-hmm.
And the next day I wanted to go back and just look again.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like I just wanted to just see, I wasn't going to go into it. I didn't have an appointment. I just wanted to see
Yeah.
the neighborhood and see what did people look happy and that, you know, was there green space and trees and was it quiet, you know, like a whatever. So I'm driving towards where I'm going, and stopped right in front of me is a police vehicle at a light. And the number on the police vehicle is 116. And I
Hmm.
was like, wait, that's the number of the apartment that I was
Oh
looking
my
to
goodness.
purchase.
Oh,
And I'm
Robin,
like,
I love it.
how? I was like, this is a sign. Like,
Yeah.
you can call
Yeah.
that crazy. You could call that my imagination making something mean something. But I think that's part of spiritual listening,
Yeah.
is actually paying attention for messages, for information to come to us in ways that we don't automatically dismiss, in ways that
Mm-hmm.
we're very open to. You know, we pray, and then we don't actually listen for the answer,
Right.
the response to our prayer. Like we expect it to come in a
Yeah.
very specific package.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's just human hubris, you know, but like sometimes our answers come in unexpected, surprising packages to show us something really important. So another way I listen is I really am very attuned to the natural world. And I always feel that, you know, spirit is so present when animals come to show us something, you know? So I was walking the other day on a trail and a rabbit came out of the side of the woods and stopped right in my path, like just stopped, right? It was right there. And rabbits are usually super skittish and afraid, and it wasn't afraid, and it just kind of hung out. It looked at me, I looked at it, and then it ran past. I instantly Googled, like, what does it mean when a rabbit,
meaning of rabbits, totally.
What does it mean when a rabbit goes across your path? And what it said was that it was a sign of abundance, because rabbits are associated with fertility and things coming to life, coming to birth. And I was like, thank you. You know, so that was a moment of thanking God, thanking this being, thanking spirit for showing me something I needed to see and feel.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. And I find too that it's often quite subtle. Like we have to be open to receiving the messages. One of my favorite names for the divine it comes from the book of Hosea, the prophetic book of Hosea, is dew, the word tal, which is dew in English. And I love that because it's like this shimmery, effervescent, we can miss it if we're not paying attention. You know, it comes in the night and then can evaporate as the sun comes up. So I love this idea of, you know, the mindfulness of really listening. And I had a similar experience with an animal yesterday. I have a little balcony right outside my living room. And I looked over and there was a bird sitting on the railing, which has, I don't think, ever happened before. Like it's just never happened. So I look over, it's this beautiful bird I've never seen. It looked like a sparrow, except its head was red. And I got my phone out. I took a picture, of course. And then like an hour later, 2 more of these birds came. They were clearly a couple. And so I looked up what kind of birds they were. They're called a red finch. And again, I also went to Google. Turns out red finches symbolize like ebullience and joy. And I think Google actually said they are sparkly, like those were the words. So yeah, it was just this subtle invitation to like elevate more joy in my life, which I never need an excuse to do. It was really powerful. It was really
That's great.
Powerful. So let's see. I want to ask you about tarot, and maybe using the process of tarot to also listen in. How do you like to use tarot? And I guess, do you have any invitations for our community to start to play with it for themselves a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So tarot is very misunderstood, and I think some people misuse it. And that's fine. People can use it how they choose. I never use it in a way of claiming to be a psychic or foretell the future. I use it as an intuition validator. It's a tool to validate and bring to the surface things that we're already feeling or worrying about or suppressing on some level. It's very much like dreams. It's in the same realm of that because it comes in images. It's beyond just immediate language and analytical, logical understanding. It opens that other side of the brain, which allows you to just feel and emote in relationship to color and to image. And what does this evoke for you? So when I read for people, I really use it as a tool for them to tell me their story and to find their own answers. It's never me telling them, oh, the card says this and that, and this is what's going to happen. It's not predictive in that way. It's more in this moment, what is it that's healing for you? What is your soul yearning to understand? And most reasons that people are looking for that is because they're seeking some understanding or some clarity or some validation or some comfort. And the cards can very often give somebody a sense of, ah, that is what I'm experiencing now. That is how I feel. You know, people
Yeah.
get scared. Oh, a bad card might come up and that's going to mean something bad's going to happen. Lots of times a bad card is actually validating, like, yeah, you're going through some struggle right now. You've just experienced the loss of your partner or something that's happened. Like, so yeah, this card is showing that there's some internal strife. And then the card after it and the card after it are giving you some advice or recommendations or from within you, like, what is your next step of action? What could you learn from this? How do you need to process this? How do you need to heal this? So I think it's you know, I use it, it's not a primary modality that I
Mm-hmm.
do. I don't, you know, put out my shingle as a tarot reader, but
Yeah.
it's so powerful as an extra adjunctive kind of modality in life coaching, in astrology, just to really, you know, sometimes people can really see themselves in something in a card also that gives them, you know, sometimes, like, for instance, somebody may be struggling with self-confidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I love to do, I mentioned to you, is, you know, I teach children, mostly preteens and teenagers. And I love to work with especially teenagers and young adults, college age kids. And I often will do astrology readings for college students and college
Mm.
grads. And, you know, they're so, so deep in this process of discovering
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
That's what I love. Like, they're so
Yeah.
open to exploring the world and exploring ideas and exploring themselves and taking, you know, appropriate levels of risk to sort of figure out who they are, what they need, what
Right.
their strengths are, what direction they want to go in. And so when I do readings for young people, there's you know, I was going to say about self-confidence, very often what's there is like a lack of this sense of self, of I can pursue what I really know and believe is what I would love.
Yeah.
Because there's so many external pressures, the
Shoulds.
societal
Yes.
pressures and shoulds, and your parents
Yeah.
want you to do one thing, and your friends are all doing pre-med, and you have the grades to do this, so shouldn't you? Because you could make a better living that way, and you want to make money, and all these shoulds. And then something shows up in a reading, and they're like, oh, that really, that, like, so there's something that can awaken around self-confidence. So in that light, like, I might pull out a tarot card that is related to their sun or their moon, or say we're talking about, you know, their Mars is retrograde in this sign, and like, I'll pull a card because there's astrological significances and
Right.
correlations with all the tarot cards. And I'll just ask them, what do you see?
Yeah.
What story is that card telling you? How do you feel about that card? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Does it make you feel angsty? Does it give you a sense of, and they get to talk about themselves and their needs.
Yes.
And it's just a
Yeah.
conversation starter for them to be
Uh-huh.
honest and forthcoming and to really process for themselves in a way that they maybe hadn't thought of things before.
It's like a spiritual permission slip almost. Yeah. And I love this this energy of the cards, like letting bubble up the unsaid things that we truly want, you know, for our lives. I think for myself too, I have an angel tarot deck that I adore. And um, if a if a if I'm feeling amazing and a card comes up that I feel like is a little more negative, um, I'll just pull another one, you know, as opposed to like
Yeah.
sitting in the muck of it. So I love this, the
Mm-hmm.
freedom in kind of deciding how we want to interpret what we
Yeah,
draw.
you
Yeah.
never give away your free will. And that's
Right.
one of the misunderstandings I think about tarot is
Mm-hmm.
people, sometimes it's the you know, culturally what we think about it, but the same thing with an astrologer, with a coach, with anything. People are worried that that person is going to somehow tell me something that's going to determine, or there are people who are looking for that. They're looking outside of themselves because they don't necessarily have that deep sense of connection to divine trust, faith within themselves, to their own inner guidance system. So they're looking externally for someone to tell me what I should do, what it's going to be. And that's not how I, see my role in the world. I would never, ever try to tell anyone who to be. I really see that the work I do, what's so sacred about it is that it's very much about giving somebody access and permission to fully inhabit their own uniqueness, their own individuality, their own purpose and path and narrative, and to really choose that in a powerful way. And that's how I see these tools.
Yeah.
Around that.
Yeah. I'm thinking as we're talking, I'm just going deep with you, Robin. I feel like we can take each other there.
Love it.
One of the things you texted me before this conversation about some of the things that are kind of swirling around for you right now. And I'm thinking about like the juxtaposition between understanding the divine as an inner knowing, a soul wisdom, an inner truth, versus a larger force greater than us that is giving us clues or gentle invitations in whatever way. So I'm curious, like, for you, I mean, basically I'm asking how you understand the divine, but like, what is the relationship or the dance for you between like the inner knowing, the inner truth, the inner trust versus surrendering to something larger than us, or listening to, the mystery, the infinite forces that are beyond something we can ever understand?
Yeah. So it's a deep and powerful question. It's not a simple question.
We're gonna
People
solve
probably
other,
write PhDs on this and spend 7-10 years of life's work on it.
Robin, just give me all the answers to life's big questions now. Go.
So here's the way I'll frame that.
Yeah.
Frame it as a question of duality consciousness or unity consciousness. So, the human plane on which we tend to understand things is very dualized. Me and you, light and dark, black and white, male and female, good and bad, right and wrong. We're very dual, and that goes back to the whole Garden of Eden mythology.
Yeah.
Eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That prior to that, everything was unity and aware of itself as all interconnected, whole, one, right? And then we became aware of a different, like, oh, I'm somehow, this skin suit defines the end where I end. And then everything outside of the skin suit is something other than. And it's okay. We need to live in that way of thinking to be sane in this world. But the deeper wisdom from a mystical perspective, from Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah, but also from every mystical tradition that you can study, is really that there is no other. We are all manifestation of God, of the divine. We are just, it's like everything, the totality of everything in existence is God. God is not something outside of us, out in the universe and the heavens somewhere as some other being. It all is the totality, the oneness of everything, the echad, the oneness of everything, is that there is nothing outside of it. Ein od. That comes from Zechariah, right?
Yeah.
It's like God is all there is, and God's name is one, and God will be one, and we'll all realize that God is oneness. The truth of that.
Ein od means there is no end.
There is nothing else. There's no end. There's no end. We're all included within it. So the answer for me is that I see myself as like a cell in the body of Godness, right? I am, and every cell has its function. If you think about your own body, a kidney cell is very different than a cell that's in your eye, than a cell that's on your fingernail. Every cell has its basic structure, its uniqueness. It looks different. It's shaped differently. It has different functions. I really believe that about everything in existence, every being. And as an astrologer, this is what I love so much, is that when I sit face to face and I meet another soul, I'm like in awe. Like I see another manifestation of divinity in front of me. And it's like, who are you?
Yeah.
How is God expressing God's self through you and your life
Yeah.
story and your journey? And wow, isn't it fascinating how you're wired to be a certain way, to be super fiery and intense and hardworking and motivated, and this other person is wired to be so emotionally sensitive and empathic, and another person is wired to be so grounded and practical. Like, it's just about our unique expression. So when I check in with myself, it's really about, who am I supposed to be in the world? What's my kind of flavor makeup and composition? And given that, what do I have to offer, right? And what's my purpose as part of this evolving world, you know? So that's the piece. It's like, I don't see it as something separate. I see it, I'm just a manifestation of. So when I'm checking in with myself on the level of like, what do I want? What do I need from the Robin ego? Then I remember, oh, I just need to be a channel. I just need to be a channel for the divine will, and the divine will show me and guide me to what I need to do, and will fulfill my needs. And I trust in that. And I just trust in that.
Yeah, I love that. It's like I use what comes into my heart is the imagery of dancing, because I love dancing so much, but it feels to me like a sacred tango, you know, that it's a both and, it's not an either or.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the Libra in you, by the way.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Because Libra is all relational. So
yeah.
The dance, the tango, it's a communion of how do we communicate and relate in this togetherness. That's a very Libra way of looking at it. Whereas I might say, in my mind, I just kind of know, because that's the Aquarian. It's very like, I just know and trust in just this divine inspiration and divine knowing. And you just, you know, it's like, you just know that that's truth. And the Pisces is very much about, like, I would say, oh, you're just being in the flow. Let yourself float down the river. You're just part of the river being floated, right? You know, wherever the universe is moving you. So even the metaphors we use are so unique and individual to who we are and how we're expressing that.
Yeah, I love that. You know, and I'm thinking too, so I'm in the process of writing a memoir, and kind of making sacred space to hold both, like celebrating our own unique expression, like your own unique Robinness, right? Alongside also a desire for growth. And, you know, as I'm doing this writing process, like some of my own patterns and habits are being revealed to me again and again, sometimes like a slap in the face, right? So it's this beautiful invitation to both celebrate like our essence, and also say, oh, there's a invitation here also to shed some things that feel like they're no longer serving me, or that may be preventing me from being even more, you know, in my highest expression.
So astrologically, what you're speaking to is perfect, because it's the north and south node in the chart. And those are a polarity of, you know, like they show up as an opposition. It's dual in nature, but it really is two sides of the same coin. And what you're speaking to is the south node represents what your soul has already mastered. And you said habits and patterns, that we all have these habits and patterns that are so deeply ingrained. They're so familiar. We've done them so well and so often in this life and possibly previous lifetimes. But there's not a lot of growth and learning there. If anything, it sort of holds us back, because it's that easy kind of comfort zone, and we stay there and we can get stuck there. And then the north node is actually showing you, it's kind of karmically, it's associated with sort of your destiny in the sense of your growth path. Well, what am I supposed to be growing towards? Like, here's where I'm coming from, but where am I going to? Where am I heading to in this life? What are the challenges in my life teaching me to develop and to grow towards? How am I evolving? What is sort of the next stage of my own transformational journey? And that North Node isn't always easy, but we always get there.
Yeah.
We get there one way or another, kicking and screaming, or as a voluntary, like, yes, like that yes, please bring it, show it to me and guide me there.
Yeah. Usually I find a little bit of both in terms of that process.
Sure.
So would you say your North Node is calling you in towards this process of surrender, or how would you kind of capture that?
Interestingly, my South Node is in Libra. So what's easy for me is being very peacekeeping in relationships.
Yeah.
And really thinking more about the balance and the fairness and the peacefulness and harmony within relationship than about my own personal needs. It's very selfless. It's very giving. It's very relational.
Yeah.
And that's easy for me. I also have a whole stellium of 6 planets there. Like everything's there.
Okay.
And it's in my 7th house, which is the house of relationship, partnership. Relationship is easy for me. I fell in love at 12. I knew that once, I married, like I stayed in partnership. I worked hard in partnership, and I very much saw myself as a person in a partnership. My North Node, what's harder for me, is in Aries. And Aries is all about the self. It's about being self-determined, self-willed, self-reliant, selfish, self-asserting, get out of my way. I'm going to do it my way, how I want. I don't care what you, and that's very hard for me. That's been a life growth lesson for me.
Yeah.
And it's really like, again, in the last 5 years, it's been, I'm learning how to do my life without a partner as a full, independent, single adult. What does it mean to own my own business? What does it mean to, manage everything on my own? And it's been eye-opening, and it's been me living into that North Node, which somehow being in a comfortable, like you get stuck sometimes where it feels easy and natural. And then that learning doesn't happen until you sort of make a shift.
Yeah. I mean, Aries they're fierce, they're fiery. My Aries,
bold, powerful.
Bold. And the usual, like my Aries friends I see as having really like healthy boundaries, like really fiercely protective of those. And so, it's interesting. I'm thinking as you speak about your own self-reliance and really sovereignty, like there's this beautiful inward call to honor that, to step more into it.
Yeah. And I think that's been such a gift. It's such a gift that that I've had that opportunity. And it doesn't always feel easy going back to like, oh boy, there's a little bit of that kicking and screaming when, it's hard. It's hard to learn new lessons that are not innately familiar and easy. It's like you got to keep bringing yourself forth with a willingness to do that work and to recognize that it is your growth path.
Yeah. Beautiful. And I find too that when I can approach the growth from like a really gentle, loving place. I mean, this is my Libra big time, but then it becomes this kind of sacred adventure together, with spirit, as opposed to something that feels harsh or self-judgmental or something like that. Right. Yeah.
But that's the piece where surrender comes in also. And like trusting. There's a psalm I really like, and I always forget which one. Maybe you'll know which one it is, but one of the psalms, there's a line that says, cast your burdens on Adonai. And it's this idea of what feels heavy and hard. You don't have to carry it all alone. You're carrying it all alone. Yeah. It's this like, you can surrender that.
Yeah. Oh, I like, as you were speaking, I heard this divine voice saying, I'll be here as long as you need. Like I'm by your side, helping to carry these. We'll carry them together. We'll carry these burdens together. Oh, Robin, what a treat. I could talk about theology and personal growth and mindfulness and mysticism all day. And,
I know.
you know, I really appreciate the way that you're able to make sacred space for a deep connection to Judaism, and then a deep connection to all of the other spiritual ways you nourish your soul. Like, there's this beautiful kind of inclusive practice that you've co-created. So I really appreciate that as someone who's on a similar path.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So I would love to invite you to share. You've given us so many beautiful kind of tools and resources just in this conversation. If people are curious to learn more about you or any of the offerings that you have, what's the best way for people to connect
Sure.
with you?
So my website is robinwald.com, and on there you'll see information about astrology, about life coaching, about tarot, about Jewish wisdom and Jewish education. I have a blog, and I've written various pieces that draw from, you know, really who I am is I do integrate all of these together. So a blog piece may include yoga and meditation practices along with Jewish wisdom, along with something astrological. And so it's kind of, you know, you get a little bit of all of those kind of cosmic, what I call my brand sort of that I brought it together is cosmic wisdom coaching. So that it's cosmic wisdom that is being drawn from so many different sources in the universe.
Yeah.
And it's being used as, you know, in service of our own highest, best potential and how we seek that out and align with that. So anyway, there are blog posts on there. There are some guided meditations. I have an Instagram account, which is Robin Wald Cosmic Wisdom. That's also my Facebook, Robin Wald Cosmic Wisdom, and people can follow the teachings and the things I post there. And please, you know, reach out to me. I love to do this work. I work with, you know, the kind of the marketing and business thing of the day is, oh, you need to define your perfect client.
Right.
My perfect client is any other soul who is on a real mission and journey to align themselves with their best self, with the divine.
Yeah.
I have clients who are women, who are men, who are teenagers and young adults, who are 80-year-old, you know, retirees looking for their next thing in life. People who are, you know, overcoming various traumas or transitions in their life, to people who are perfectly happy but want to understand more about themselves and their child, or themselves and their partner, so they could have better relationships in their life. So like, I work with anyone who really has a deep yearning to be a more loving, open-hearted, mindful, compassionate being in their own way. You know, that's my client.
Oh, amen. Yes. I love it. And I love this vision of kind of drawing from multiple wells, you know, to nourish ourselves. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We'll link to all of your wonderful resources and information on the
Thank you. I just
website.
want to wish you all the best in all of your endeavors, especially in your memoir and on your bike rides and in seeing beautiful signs and things from the universe. And I want to wish the same to all of your listeners and your followers, that, you know, we should all be really blessed to receive what it is that we need from the universe.
Thank you, Robin. Receive that blessing. And I'll offer one in closing to our community, kind of bringing all of the beautiful offerings that you brought to our conversation. During this time, may we open ourselves to sacred surrender with open palms. May we receive opportunities to listen more deeply inward and to the whispers of the universe around us. May we find beautiful opportunities to affirm our own intuition in whatever ways feel most meaningful to us. And may we forever be called on a beautiful path of growth and learning in gentle ways. And during times when it feels a little stickier, may we lean on the love and the support of our community as we navigate this exquisite adventure of life. So may it be. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.